Okay. Welcome, everyone. Today is Monday, March 23rd. The first order of business today is a public hearing. So I'll go ahead and call to order our public hearing. This is the first of two required public hearings. Have there been any comments, oral or written, concerning the proposed 2026-2027 school budget? And is there anyone in person today that would like to make a public comment about the 2026-27 school budget? Okay, having no comments, oral or written, submitted, and then in person, I'll go ahead and call public hearing number 1 adjourned. Moving on to public hearing number 2. I'll call to order the public hearing. Have there been any comments, oral or written, concerning the proposed donation of the tennis outbuilding and equipment associated with ball field number 2?
Nothing.
Nothing from the district. Board members, I'm not hearing anything. Is there anyone in person that would like to make a comment about the donation of the tennis equipment outbuilding and ball field number 2? Okay. Hearing none, I'll call public hearing number 2 adjourned. Next, I'll call to order our special board meeting. Please note that directors Darling, Zander, myself, and Judson are in person, and Director Sand, you're joining us virtually. Can we do a quick sound check to make sure that you can be heard?
Yes, here I am. Good,
Okay,
good
great.
to see you all.
Yeah, thank you. Do I have a volunteer to read the mission and vision statement?
I can read it.
Okay, thanks, Lily.
At the Decorah Community School District, we embrace student learning and well-being as our fundamental purpose. We will, in partnership with our students, families, and community, make the world a better place. The mission of the Decorah Community School District is learning, thriving, creating our legacy. The vision of the Decorah Community School District is Decorah Community School District will be a collaborative, innovative, learning-centered organization, empowering students to embrace their personal strengths and create their future.
Thank you. Under new business, our first item today is to review the current service agreement in consideration of changes for the 26-27 agreement with Clinicare. And Tim, I will turn it over to you to share, to provide an overview and what we've heard from the Iowa Board of Education.
Sure. We've had Clinicare has operated Crossroads Academy in Decorah for about a little over 20 years. It's an interesting relationship because they're a non-public, non-accredited school, and that gives them a leeway to a little freedom to hire whoever they want. Because we have an agreement with Clinicare and we have an agreement with the member schools in the consortium, we've been operating it to provide special education services to our students. And everybody else has used that as well. We've had some, the Department of Ed has been involved this year in how the certifications on staff, training of staff, with regards to how they interact with disruptive students, how students are making progress towards high school degrees, and so we're in the process of waiting for an official letter from the Department of Ed on corrective actions, but they had some immediate corrective actions with some certified staff and not being certified in the right area to teach students. And that's the concern for the member school districts is when you have a student with a special, with an IEP, it's your responsibility to make sure that child's instruction is delivered by a licensed person. The rub becomes if your placement is at Crossroads, like if you're the superintendent at New Hampton or North Fayette Valley or Decorah, you're not involved in the hiring decision or the process at Crossroads. And so quite honestly, I think even prior to this year, we hadn't pulled those licenses ever before. Because in fairness to Crossroads, they had checked with the Department of Ed, and the Department of Ed said, oh yeah, that person can teach. But I think the piece that BOE was missing was they could teach at a thing or at a non-accredited school, but what they can't do is deliver IEP instruction. That was kind of the missing piece. So with the Department of Ed being involved, and so they're gonna have a letter with concerns that should come out in a couple weeks, but their immediate concerns were licensure of staff at Crossroads. And what was specifically concerning was that all the superintendents got a letter that said from the BOEE, which is Board of Educational Examiners, which issue licenses in Iowa, that said it's an impossible ethics violation if instruction is not provided. And it's not an ethics violation for the people at Crossroads, it's an ethics violation for each of the sending districts. So I got a lot of feedback from my peers that they were super concerned that a school that they thought they were sending their students to, that, you know, and again, Crossroads thought they were doing the right thing, but that could be a ethics violation, which would then in turn cause people to lose their licensure or get it suspended or something like that. So per our agreement with Clinicare, we need to notify them by the end of March if we look to sever the agreement. So that's what this letter would do. What we will do for next year is explore options, whether we provide it ourselves, whether the consortium comes together. There would always be a possibility that we could have a different agreement with Clinicare, but this is a procedural step to make sure that we terminate the agreement by the end of March so that we know what's going on. And so it would be effective at the end of this school year. The short-term licensure issues have been addressed by Crossroads, and we appreciate that, because we wouldn't have been able to send, no one would have been able to send their children to a school that didn't have a licensed teacher at it.
So just to be clear to the board, the Crossroads Educational Facility is located in Decorah, near the Decorah School District, but is operated by Clinicare, which is not located here. So while Decorah and many districts in our Northeast Iowa region send students there for education, Decorah is not, this is not a school that's under our
It's not part of the Decorah Public Schools.
districts.
And
Right.
it's not a charter school. It's a non-public, non-accredited school. So that's gonna be different than St. Ben's, which is a non-public accredited school, or Montessori. So it's kind of like, one of the preschool partners that wouldn't be an accredited school, like Little Farmers. And so Little Farmers can hire whoever they want as a teacher, but if the student has an IEP, that would be whoever is sending that student to Little Farmers to make sure that IEP is delivered. So that's some of the stuff that we've really been sorting out pretty intensely this last couple months with Department of Ed and Board of Educational Examiners. So,
And this is a difficult position for the Decorah School District to be in because we're legally obligated to provide services for our students. So while it can feel disruptive and painful to have a big change, it's important that we are making sure that the programming that our kids are getting is by people that are accredited to do it or certified to do it. Does the board have what other questions does the board have or topics for discussion?
Point of clarification, so this letter would terminate at the, August 15th. What about the remainder of the school year? If you said something was addressed in the short term, is that?
yeah, they've got it so that they've got licensed staff for the IEP. So it works out that we can send our students, and then school year ends in May, hopefully June, I suppose outside possibility, but yeah, it would be for the remainder of the school year.
And why is that solution not viable beyond this school year?
It's like, we don't have a plan for next year, so that could certainly be a possibility for next year.
It just needs to restart.
Yeah, it would just need to restart. What can't happen is we don't do the letter, and then we get into May and we're like, oh, this isn't gonna work, and then nobody sends their students to Crossroads anymore because, you know, they don't feel confident or don't feel
Right.
that it's gonna
because
work out for them.
The March deadline is important.
Yep.
So this helps us cover ourselves meeting this deadline. And then there will be work that continues to figure out how services will be met in the 26-27 academic year.
So then we will need a contract with someone for next year. Is that how?
Well, if we would get into, again, a consortium type thing, we would want to put it on our, I'm looking for the right word, Laura, continuum of services.
Mhm.
So it becomes an option of a placement on our services, so we would need to do that. There's probably a lot more steps that we're summarizing. There'd also be the possibility that each district would just have their students go back. I mean, some districts have already done that currently, just had brought their children back to the home district, so that's also a possibility.
Okay, thank you.
So we won't, you know, I don't know what we will do at this time. So everything remains open options.
What other questions are important?
It just seems more like a procedural thing today so we have all our options on the next few months. Correct?
For sure. I mean, I guess the other option is a different school district could say that they would be the fiscal agent and they could go into an agreement with Clinic Care and operate Crossroads. It'd be weird to operate it into Decorah, so maybe it would move, but then we would still be in the place where we'd have to make there's two things going on here. We want to have an agreement with Clinic Care, and then we have to decide where we're sending our students. So Laura and I are just, you know, I know every district wants to make sure that they're sending their children to a place that has the right licensed staff, but that's a high priority. And
I don't have anything to add, just to note that before we send the letter, there's a typo in Clinic Care at the end of the first paragraph.
Spelling, misspelling.
I'll move to approve the letter and Clinic Care term making agreements effective August 15th, whatever the date is.
Second.
Okay, hearing a motion in a second, any further discussion from the board? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to item B under new business. Consider approval of the application to the Conference Realignment Committee. Decorah has operated our activities and athletics as an independent for the last this year, and is planning the academic or the independent activities and athletics for next school year as well, because planning is well underway and started last October for next school year. And earlier in this year, or excuse me, in 2025, legislation was passed to establish a conference realignment committee, which would be a committee of neutral professionals across the state to help make decisions for difficult situations like we are currently in. Decorah is a uniquely large size school in a corner of the state and far away from other similar sized schools. And in our application today, Mr. Adam Riley has shared a draft of an application, which is the deadline is tomorrow. And this proposes the establishment of a conference in Northeast Iowa that would include many of the schools in the previous Northeast Iowa conference. In the application, there is data detailing the enrollment and bed count in each of the districts. Not to go through every detail of the application, but I agree with this recommendation. I feel like Decorah is similar in size to many of our close neighboring school districts. And the enrollment gap or difference, I don't feel like is much more different than what they're finding in other conferences that they've joined. The recommendation to form a conference, I also feel provides stability statewide, knowing that a new conference would be formed. Decorah would be in a conference and it would be the least domino effect or chain reaction statewide, considering other conferences. So I'll pause there and welcome other information from Tim or the board.
The conference committee, which is new, and it's kind of things like this could be their first action. There are other schools that have switched conference alignment, and they are the ones kind of get put on a fast track. And if they have, if they can say, hey, we're leaving conference X, and everybody in that conference is fine with it, and we're going to conference Y, and everybody's fine with it, then they just submit all that document and they'll get kind of rubber stamped. But the conference realignment committee did identify the two schools, Waverly, Shell Rock, and Decorah, as kind of like the high need priorities because they're the schools that are operating without a conference. So as part of our application, yeah, we're asking for kind of a reconstitution of a lot of the old members of the NEIC, an additional a couple other members to make it a 17 conference that's more viable long term. But part of that application is we have to give the committee other options to look at. So we did put in data for the Upper Iowa and for the WAMAC conferences. And so the process from here is conference realignment committee looks at that. They're going to get data from all of those conferences, kind of like what Adam put together. All the schools involved will provide similar data. And it's a pretty short timeline for them to look at it. What's going to be different about this process than when we went through our appeal and rejected from the Upper Iowa was at that time, it was just, they would say yes or no. This process will say, might say no to our application, but will then place us in a conference. And that's what this committee, the realignment committee, well, they have the ability to make the recommendation of a conference or requirement to make a recommendation of a conference to the Department of Ed makes the final decision, but we assume that she will go along with the director, Scott will go along with that. So I'll take a breath. Is there anything that Mr. Riley, you feel like we should add to that narrative as you've worked on this the most there?
Well, just process first. I want to see some different details just for the public to be aware. The Conference Realignment Committee had their first meeting in the end of January. It's 9 superintendents and 9 activities directors from throughout the state as the legislation laid out. They had subsequently 4 meetings between now and basically the beginning of March, at which they laid out this process for any schools in the state that were wishing to be considered for a conference application on this immediate timeframe since the committee's been put together. They also have a timeline that's put together that'll begin next school year with a November application date as schools go along. But obviously a part of this was any schools that were in need, and obviously the independent status of 2 of the schools within the state are ones that they knew that they needed to address sooner as opposed to later. Otherwise, they would push back our application for another year before it was actually ready to be able to go. So they've laid out a timeline for this application on the 24th. The committee will meet again on Wednesday, at which time they'll consider the applications that have been placed or that have been put in. Ours would obviously be one of them. They can decide whether they want to take that on or not on that things, but it's clear part of the tea leaves of this is the Waverly and Decorah applications are ones that they're waiting for and ready to be able to tackle within the first one. So within that, the schools in that meeting that'll occur on Wednesday, the committee will go ahead and discuss what the different options are for what they view for those schools for a conference option. Then they will contact those other schools for a hearing that will occur on April 29th. So that is when the Conference Realignment Committee will meet. discuss the application, and in our case, our application, with a deadline for decision by May 8th. As it relates, it could occur prior to that as far as a decision, at which time the recommendation is where we would be placed. From a conference standpoint, there is an appeals process that can go, as Tim referred to the Department of Education, of which Director Snow would hear. We've been through one of those appeal processes before, so that would follow the exact same rules of Chapter 37 prior to this legislation. And then the only thing that can be appealed on that is whether or not the process was followed.
Right, and legally, Decorah has the right to be in a conference. We've talked about, this item has been on our agenda off and on over the last couple of years as we were, as the Northeast Iowa Conference was dissolved and Decorah was without a conference. The position we're in today is not a forever solution. Adam Riley has worked really hard to put together a whole year's worth of activities without the support of a conference, and that is no small task. And he's been wildly successful in scheduling, but that has led to increased travel, which means not only increased travel expenses, but that means increased hours that kids are missing school and missing sleep. And it's just not sustainable forever. Mr. Riley, I'm grateful for the work that was done for this 2025-26 season, and already the efforts that you've put in to the 26-27 year. So the action that if this application is accepted and this idea is adopted, and there is a, wherever Decorah is placed, whether in this recommendation for a newly created conference in Northeast Iowa, or if we're placed in another conference, that would take effect in the 26 or 27-28 academic year.
And we will be placed no matter what in something. Like there's no more independence after.
Yeah,
this
so
process.
part of the way that the language of this lays out is the realignment committee makes a recommendation for you to accept or not accept. If you choose to be independent, it's either take that or choose to be independent. Our current status is we're independent because, yeah, and you can see in the application as we went through the process, there's a couple of things that I think just for public to be able to be clear. As it relates to our current status, and the documentation of this is clearly we were rejected upon our appeal to the Upper Iowa Conference. And then in addition to that, a lot of dialogue has occurred in relation to us and the WAMAC. Well, we had a letter that was shared with us from the WAMAC, as in we appreciate the conversations that we had, but you would not be approved if you applied.
Right.
So as opposed to going through another step on the mediation process that could take up to 18 months. That was part of the application to be able to say, maybe the system needs to be reviewed, and have some improvements. So at least there's an answer at the end, and we're fully aware we might not agree with the answer that the realignment committee makes. But we do feel for our students, that at the end of the process, they should be somewhere, in relation to having a place as it relates to that. The other piece that I'll add, for the public on the application standpoint, we lay out a timeline of how we got to where we're at, and then a few things that were prioritized through. We had a meeting on March 10th with our coaches, and some subsequent survey data that was set. Also included some of our January of 2024 survey data from our community in relation to where and what they prioritized as it related to some of the needs and what a conference is supposed to align and what activities are needed, as well as trying to be able to lay out some detailed information in relation to keeping the area, as we see it, but everybody might not see it that way, in balance, so it doesn't create a hardship of somebody being left out, and or league still being to operate over a period of time, and then let continue over the next 5 to 10 years to see how this could transition and occur within that. I think I answered your question there, Lily.
I'll echo what Cindy said, thanking you, Adam, for 2 years of prior work and now a future year's worth of work, and also your work on this committee already. I think the one piece we haven't summarized is that, we did talk about this as a board 2.5 years ago, not a little less, but we had a whole meeting about this. We surveyed the community. We're trying to figure out what our best options were, and candidly, what we're advocating for today is exactly what we were talking about 2 years ago, that the former NEIC, or however you want to define it, actually made a lot of sense geographically for our students, for the students of other districts, so that they wouldn't have to travel very far, competitive sizes. No one school is like just vastly, 400 students bigger than another, like we're all relatively the same. And so I really appreciate what we've got here. I think our coaches, our community, everyone is on the same page about what we're asking for. So now hopefully the committee will also listen and see into that side of things as well.
Mhm. Also, if the committee entertains this idea, and I can't remember if I've already said this, but if school districts, if this new conference is formed, the conferences that they're leaving are still stable. So it's not like there's the threat of because of this action, other conferences would dissolve. That's not true. However, if Decorah is placed in the Upper Iowa, which is not a good fit for a number of reasons, there could be other schools wanting to move out of that conference. If we are placed in the WAMAT, there could be schools that leave that conference. So I think that this is a plan that is good for Decorah, but also good for conferences around the state.
I'll echo that entirely.
I do want to say how much I appreciate all of the work that's gone into this by Adam and Brad and people on the board who have worked closely with Adam on it. I do have one question about the process. So we would get this the decision in May. I think that's what I heard you say, Adam. And is there is there an appeal process after that if we do not get our first choice, or what's the next step after that?
So the way the appeals process, and we've been through the appeal process once ourselves, nothing has changed in that as it relates to Chapter 37. There's a certain number of days that either party could appeal to the director, at which time the director has 60 days to set a hearing for an appeal on the process. And then after that hearing occurs, the director has to rule on that hearing 60 days after it happens and occurs. So within that still gives us a timeline where we know that there'd be an answer, reasonably saying by August. We wouldn't want to have an answer no later than October 1 is one of the deadlines if you're trying to plan for the 27-28 school year, as other ADs are trying to know what's going to happen from a scheduling standpoint. So the timeliness of this should make sense and should time out, so we know we'll still have an answer whether either party ends up appealing whatever gets laid out.
But you said the appeals can only center on procedural questions, not outcomes.
That is correct. Yep. And historically speaking, in Chapter 37, I can't give you the totals in terms of the total number of times that appeals had occurred to the director since this Chapter 37 was, I believe, in 91 or 92 that was put in place. I think the director has only overruled once an appeal during that time frame. So we'll yet again try to make sure that we still follow the process that's laid out by the realignment committee, and respect the process, knowing that there'll at least be an answer at the end. So.
I don't have, I think this is a action item today, right, to send this because it's due tomorrow.
Yeah,
So I'll make the motion to approve our application for the conference realignment.
Second.
Okay, hearing a motion in a second, any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The next, we're on item C under new business. Consider approval to set a public hearing to amend the 25-26 school calendar.
so this is just putting a public hearing out there for our April meeting. This would give the opportunity then to have an amendment to the current year school calendar that the board could approve. And the short version is if we wanted to forgive those 2 days after Memorial Day, we're gonna do this process. We haven't done this in the past, but I was doing some light reading at night and I was like, oh, to amend a calendar, maybe we should have a public hearing and Carrie Weber and I, our attorney, are having a discussion about whether it's required, but it's best practice.
Yeah. I
And so,
appreciate always
um,
that.
yeah, I always like to find out new things. I'm not sure how many people do that, but we're looking at, with our 5th snow day already happening, and I'm gonna knock on wood that we don't have any more snow days. But crazy things have happened. We have pivoted to, on the calendar that we approved last year at this time, to virtual learning, not just for the 2 hours, but for the full day. So that'll be different. If we would have a full day absence, we would go to virtual learning. We can use up to about 30 virtual hours a year. We've only used 10, so we got a little bit of cushion there. And then in the calendar that we built, did have extra hours, so we could forgive those 2 days. We did that last year as a board, and at least be nice to have the option. And so that's why we would be setting a public hearing
Okay,
to consider that possibility.
and I appreciate the district's prioritizing in-person learning. That we've had 5 snow days and not have any of those 5 be virtual. So I really do believe in that as well, and I'm glad that we take that route.
I'll make a motion that we set a public hearing on April 13th at 5:30 PM to amend the 25-26 academic calendar.
Second.
Okay, hearing a motion in a second, any further discussion? The only question that I have is to confirm that April 13th is the correct date of our next board meeting, so I'm gonna take a look at. So we don't have to schedule another special meeting to,
No, it should be second Monday.
it's the second Monday. Okay. Thanks for giving me that space. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, and then last under new business is item D, approval of single items for capital projects beyond the spending threshold. So there are 3 items. There was a 4th item, the 12th passenger van, that information was added this morning. So board directors, I do want to respect your time and capacity for decision making. So if this is if more time is needed to discuss the van, I'll certainly entertain that, but I did recommend that Tim add this under this category because it fits, and if we can take action on it today if we're ready, but if not, we'll schedule another meeting or consider scheduling a different meeting.
And time sensitive, all these, of course, are time sensitive. If they're not time sensitive, then we'll put them on the next board meeting agenda. The E-rate, I can tell you that we get reimbursed for 60% of the cost, but John, I'm looking at you and would invite you to tell us what these are bids for.
Yeah, so these are E-rate Category 2 funds. So Category 2 funds help us with the internal of our network, so the switches, the wireless access points, things like that. E-rate has set a 5-year budget for every school, and it's per student. This year's a new year for that 5-year budget, so our current 5-year budget is $327,490.75. So that's what we get for the next 5 years for the E-rate Category 2 options. We receive every year, we can receive every year up to 60% of that. These 3 projects, kind of looking at all the different projects that we could have or should have to replace aging infrastructure. The first one was our core network upgrade. So our core 2 switches, it's where everything runs through our network. That's our main stack of switches. And then our new elementary, that was kind of a big priority, because we want to make sure we have the hardware on hand for the new school next year. So that bid is just for the hardware. It's not installation, it's nothing like that. It'll be just the hardware itself, which that helps us kind of budget out the E-rate side of it. It gets us a little more bang for our buck for the E-rate money. And then the last one was our wireless licensing. So our wireless infrastructure we have currently is, the license for it is expiring in this coming year. So we want to make sure we're set with that and have licensing and warranties for wireless. So all three of those projects total $302,585, with a 60% discount, roughly E-rate would cover $181,000 worth of that, which would leave us around $121,000 for our cost.
Mhm.
I think it's a good thing. It's time sensitive because it's due by the end of this month, so.
Yeah.
If it's approved today, I'll spend the next 2 days filing the fun FCC paperwork.
I'm sure that is fun. So, I think that us maintaining our technological infrastructure is critically important for our school district with how much we depend on that for learning pre-K all the way through 12. And in addition, obviously, the value school will need to reinvest to make sure that that is ready on day one. Does the board have any questions for Sean or anything that you'd like to talk about as a board with this request?
Sean, I may not be looking at the capital projects quite correctly, but it looks like everything pretty much came under your estimated on that list as well.
That's always the way to do it.
Yeah.
I mean,
That feels better, doesn't it? And it's nice, it helps too to quantify just the, I don't know if it's identified as a bundle discount, but.
It's nice with E-rate because with the E-rate process, there's what they call a 470 application. So I put 470 out. It's kind of like our big project we just did. We put it in a system and then anybody nationwide can bid on it. Makes it super competitive, which is great. The bad part is we do get spam bids. So there's a few bids in here that were for a couple $1,000s, and it's like, okay, those are clearly spam bids. They're just throwing numbers out to throw a number out there. But that's expected with the system, and there's checks and balances in place with that.
No, I think that's good. I don't have any questions on that. The only question I have is we have this all as one item here. What is everybody's thoughts on the van?
I would like to keep that separate.
Keep that separate, do
Yeah.
these ones. Okay. I'll make a motion to approve our capital projects, our E-rate capital projects.
I'll second approving the 3 E-rate capital project requests.
Okay, there was a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the E-rate items? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, Sean, you can get to work. Okay, and then also under item D is the proposal for a 12-passenger van. This is also a time-sensitive bid. Again, we got this information today, so I'll turn it over to the board for discussion. Or Tim, do you have any other?
Yeah, I would just,
information?
so we did have, I'm sorry that it was late, it wasn't even on my radar, we could have had it until Cindy suggested we already had an agenda item for it, but if we need more time, we could certainly take that. We did have 3 12-passenger vans on the capital projects, and we've already purchased one. So we had listed a 12-passenger all-wheel route van. We also had listed a 12-passenger route / activities van and a 12-passenger activities van. So which one now I'm looking at Mr. Franczynski, which one, we've already purchased one and it was a very similar price than it was from Dahl. So that made it a little confusing, like, are we just buying the same thing again and again and again? But this is actually a different van.
Yep, lower miles too.
Okay. And so the first one you would say, was that the route van we bought or the activity van or the slot?
Activities.
So the first one the first one we bought is a route van, or activities van. This one would slot into the route slash activities van.
Yep.
World, okay. And we, roughly had $39,000 bid on that. And that's close. I forget what we paid the last time.
Last year or last,
The one we did like last week.
39,292.
Okay,
And to add a van to our route fleet would help save miles on buses and be more cost affordable.
Yep.
To complete those routes, and we need to. I mean, I'm not saying that this is not an investment in vehicles, but there's potential for transportation cost savings.
We would eliminate a bus. We'd eliminate a bus.
Eliminating a bus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is not the all-wheel drive one though.
No, so that's gonna be much harder to find.
Mhm.
So I got educated today. Not only are school districts specifically looking for these, you've got airports, hotels, numerous other things like that. The all-wheel drive might take some time. We probably won't even see one before school starts.
And we can't buy a new one, right?
and we can't buy a new one for whatever reason. There's a state law that the school districts can only use 12, you can only purchase used 12 passenger vans for service, and that's been around forever. And there's somebody tried where like the superintendent bought the van and then sold it to the district. And I guess they found out about that and somehow said that's not enough of a used van, so.
That is a good idea though,
Well,
but not that we're gonna do that.
yeah, I mean,
Creative.
yeah, it was kind of like, I don't know, Tim has a van for the summer and I don't know,
We're
but he
not
still,
doing that.
yeah, so, yeah, Ross, we're not doing that. Okay. So, and these are always time sensitive, and again, I know if the board needs more time with it, that's totally fine, we just would look to schedule a quick meeting this week, probably.
I don't have a concern about getting it. I know we need it. I guess my question is with like eliminating a bus, I'm a rural resident. Rural roads can get real messy. Are we comfortable with the van?
This one would be areas that are easily accessible.
Okay.
We'd be dropping a bus on that one. The all-wheel drive would be the dicey spots.
Yep.
There's a couple spots we are currently picking up and the driver has to do like an 8-point turn to get out of.
Yep.
So we would do that in a certain area too. I'd like to add another van route to it, potentially drop another bus, but I won't know until enrollment's done.
Mhm.
And I'll just also, we currently do have an all-wheel drive van this would allow us to be able to swap that one, so it's available for
Great.
his use with what we currently have.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't have any issue with approving this today, being it's virtually a carbon copy of what we approved a little bit ago, and it was on our schedule, and it'll eliminate getting together in a couple days, so.
I do appreciate that we, that this will eliminate a bus and for athletic events, sometimes we can use vans instead of taking a bus. I know that there are times when staff uses vehicles to drive to Elkader or Des Moines, et cetera. Do we have enough cars in our fleet for those situations so that don't have one or two people taking vans?
Nope, we got a couple different vehicles. We kind of rotate around.
We've added, like, we just added that, white four-door sedan, whatever that product was. And then 48 kind of with it being a 4-cylinder. So, yeah, we have some more fuel efficient models for folks who travel in, but that's a really good question, Carol.
Okay.
I'll move to approve the purchase of the 12-passenger van as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, hearing a motion and a second, any further conversation? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And that brings us to the end of our agenda, so I'll call the meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.